Hello and welcome to episode 2 of PodQuest, the video gaming show developed by gamers, for you. I am Player 1 host Dustin Lyon. With me today is...
Kelsy Polnick, Player 2.
And Paul English, Player 3.
How's everything going today, guys?
It's good. Been a good week.
It was a rough getting out of the stables today, but we're here. We're ready to go. We're ready to crush some gaming news today.
I didn't know you lived in stables.
Oh, yeah. I am a filthy animal.
What have you guys been playing this week? Let's start with you, Kels.
Mostly Mario Odyssey again. Up to 817 moons now.
Ooh.
And I beat the dark side of the moon finally. Took about 10 tries, I think.
The darker side of the moon?
Yes, sorry, the darker side.
It's unfortunate you're not a Pink Floyd
It
fan.
was really cool. I'm not a Pink Floyd fan, no.
It kills me inside.
And the only other thing I've really played this week is I put Cinemora EX on my Switch in, which I thought I would really like, and it really didn't do it for me. There's a few genres where I just can't grasp them in 3D, and shoot 'em ups are one of those genres. And it's got some cool mechanics, like you can slow down time to like dodge the really bullet hell kind of parts, but you get penalized score wise for the slower you do level. So that is kind of cool.
That's kind of fair, though.
Yeah,
It's very fair. But with 3D graphics, I find a lot of problems with the foreground and background blending, where like I hit things or I dodge things that I don't need to dodge, or there's ships that come in from the background into the foreground, and I can't tell when they're available to actually hit or when I need to start watching out for them.
That could be a problem for somebody with such poor depth perception.
Yeah. And my depth perception's fine. There's a lot of one of my least favorite parts of shoot 'em up games is the environmental dodging areas. I'd just rather shoot ships and dodge bullets. And there's a lot of big environmental dodging parts in that game that are pretty significant. So there's just a lot of little things that kind of add up to. I finished it. I didn't understand what was going on with the story either. Some kind of underground rebel group trying to like take down an empire to like avenge his son, but it got a little convoluted. So I ended up skipping some of the story scenes near the end of the game. Not my favorite.
How do you feel about Abadox?
I have not finished that game, but it's an interesting. I like the theme of that, where you're like going through like an alien body. Like that's really really cool kind of concept for shoot 'em up.
It has a lot of elemental stuff. Why I bring it up? I love Abadox. I've beaten it.
I haven't beat it. I played a lot more Section Z when I was a kid than Abadox. I like
Section
that one.
Z, yeah, Section Z.
What about you, Paul? What have you been playing?
I like
Besides Star Wars, or lack of Star Wars.
Current, and I've been playing a lot of Star Wars.
He can
when
unlock
I
Vader,
can.
but he chooses not to.
I did, and I unlocked Luke
Rebellion.
Skywalker. This will tie into my Star Wars rant in a moment.
In 30 seconds?
Yeah, so we'll get to my Star Wars-ness in a bit. PUBG, that's about it. I haven't had a lot of time to game, and when I have, it's been with some friends of mine and some squad-based online shooting games. So.
How have you done with PUBG? Like, do you play a lot of single, or do you play with team?
Team. We do duos. I've got 3 guys that I usually will, like, kind of, whoever's online, we usually will duo up. For online, we'll play squads.
Okay, that's cool. Have you ever gotten a chicken dinner yet?
Yeah, actually, we've had 4 or 5 this week.
Ooh,
So
that's not bad.
yeah, we're not too bad. We're inconsistent, but not inconsistent together. So like, I'll have an off week, and everybody will have a good week, and we might win, we might not, and then next week somebody will, and it's the same thing. If we're all playing really well, we'll have lots of wins.
I like PUBG. Like, I haven't played it in a little while, but it's an interesting experience. But I just hate when you're by yourself and then you hear like a gunshot and you just immediately duck and you're like, oh.
I watched some videos of it because I have no interest in it. I don't get the appeal. It looks kind of boring.
It is the definition of insanity, because you are doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result.
Yeah, like I watched 3 different. I think they were fairly high level players, and it all seemed like the same thing. You're just looking at like loot screens for most of it, and people are like really obsessed about getting helmets really early. And
yeah, there's different types of players in that game that really kind of like define the overarching strategy of it. There's aggressive people, there's loot based people, and there's like the silent stealthy ones. So there's a lot of like tactical prowess that goes into that game, and that's why it's appealing to me. So like memorizing positions on the map, where the best cover is, where the landscape changes, when to engage, when to go slow, like that kind of stuff really interests me. So
I can see that where that'd be interesting to play. I don't see where that'd be interesting to watch.
The thing that interesting to watch is the weird kills or the weird glitches and stuff. Those things are hilarious. Like I can recall one video. I think it was a part of like the best of frying pan collection.
Yeah.
And it was like this one guy where he ran out of ammo. And he was shooting. This guy was firing at these guys, and he ran out of ammo, and he was done. He knew he was screwed. So you saw the player pulls out the frying pan, and you can hear him on the voice chat because you can chat with the other players online. He's like, "No, not the pan, not the pan." Tink. Done.
Yeah, I watched a couple of those videos too, and there were some interesting things where like two guys got dropped, and there was a gun and ammo. One guy would grab the gun, the other guy would grab the ammo, and then they both look at each other and just start punching because neither of them could play. But most of them were just people crashing motorbikes because they were terrible drivers.
It can get pretty intense when there is some kind of combat going on, like if something close quarters, like in a city or in a building where there's windows to jump in and out of, and people who have figured out how to do the crouch jump well. Like still so many people have not figured out how to crouch jump. It's going to change. A new test server patch came out where they introduced a whole lot of stuff, changing the map dramatically in a lot of areas, which looks really exciting, and adding in vaulting. So it's just a one button command that will get you over a fence, over a car, through a window, instead of having to simultaneously smash, crouch, and jump at the same time to navigate through a window. And you can do it to almost any window. So the gameplay I've seen, it's like ninja battles. Like a guy will get shot, and then he's just running through a building, through a window, onto the ground, through a window, through a building, up some stairs, out of a window, through a window, and the guy's chasing him, doing the same thing. And I'm like, I'm excited about that, and I don't know why.
Very cool. I've still been playing a little bit of Mario Odyssey. No, I'm not nowhere near the 800 something power moons that Kelsey's at, but I think 817. I think the last it was about 560, 570. So I'm getting up there. I have the darker side of the moon unlocked. I haven't done it yet, but I did try it. It is hard.
What part did you get to on it?
The very beginning.
Like with were you doing the pole vaulting over the lava?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just got to that part, and it was like, oh man, I'm gonna need to like have a good marathon of just warming up before I do this kind of thing.
Yeah, they've really tested your skills throughout the rest of the game because you get a bunch of different transformations, a bunch of different environmental stuff that you've hit doing other moons. Probably since you've done about 500 moons, you should have hit most of the different things you'll run into. But yeah. It's
I've also been playing a lot of the .hack GU remaster re-release. Foreshadowing to today's discussion. So I'll leave that for a little bit tonight. And then yesterday I picked up Pokemon Ultra Sun. So I got started on that last night. I haven't gotten fully in depth into it because I'm still trying to get through the starter tutorial stuff where, you know, a lot of players like myself are like, we've been playing this game for like 20 odd years. Can we just have a I know how to play button? So I can skip all this, hey, this is how you catch a Pokemon. I know how to catch a Pokemon. I don't need you to explain it to me for the upteenth time.
It's weird that they don't have a skip option for that. It's really strange, especially in today's landscape.
Especially when it's a re-release of a game that
came out last
not
year.
Not too long ago. Yeah, that's very unusual.
It was funny though because since this technically it was a remade re-release from last year. I broke my rule of always start with the fire type Pokemon because every game I've always started with the fire type, with the exception of Yellow because you're stuck playing with Pikachu.
But Squirtle's the strongest.
No, no man, Charmander for the win. So I picked Rowlet. He's the little the grass owl type.
That's who I started with.
And I was like, okay, I need a good name for him. So I sat there and I thought about it really carefully, and I was like, all right, I got it. So I called him Owlver Queen.
I never rename my Pokemon. It feels dirty to me.
Why would you start with a grass owl? There's so many in my
because he looks like a weird ninja wizard later on.
Oh,
He's
does he?
Awesome. Yeah.
Well, that's pretty awesome. Because I'm like, why wouldn't you be a dragon or a overpowered water?
Well, the fire one looks like Tony the Tiger in this game. He's kind of weird looking once he's evolved.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
Tony the Tiger if he became
No,
a fire luchador.
That's
Yeah.
great.
No, I went with the grass
Reference
one because
for all you cereal lovers out there.
his last evolution is called Decidueye. He looks like Green Arrow, so I was like, okay, this has got to be my bunny name. So that's what I've been playing this week.
that.
Besides playing Star Wars Battlefront 2 for maybe consecutive time of 45 minutes and then getting
So
it
you finished
refunded.
the campaign, is what I mean?
I don't know what the actual length of the campaign is. I've heard it's really good.
I didn't touch
I've
it.
hered about 4 hours from what I've read.
I played the regular like the regular the regular like flying around shooting stuff mode. I can't remember what it's called, but just the one where you're just stuck in X-wings and TIE fighter stuff. Space battle.
Pretty generic name. Yeah.
It was okay, but it felt too slow and it feels uneven because like you can spawn and like you fly ahead for 5 seconds and suddenly you get shot out of the sky again. And then the objectives are really weird where it's you have to destroy this one thing to continue the objective going on until a point where it's destroy this thing on the very top of this area to open the shield to shoot at the core, but you can only shoot at the core for 30 seconds while you're trying to
Is this
dodge.
an online mode or is this
This is online mode.
Okay.
So, so it was really, really annoying. I tried doing the on the ground battle stuff. I wasn't really liking it, and I didn't even touch the campaign stuff. So then the following day, I went through EA's return policy. I'm like, I wonder if I can actually get my money back on this. So I submitted the request refund, and it got approved in 2 minutes.
That's amazing.
That's not a good sign.
This is amazing because I would have thought they would have been like flooded with requests at the moment.
Probably just have an easy button set up for it.
Yeah.
There's another one.
Staples
There's another
button.
one.
Staples button.
There's another one. Well, that's better than, maybe that's just their company policy. They're really good about stuff like that, especially when they're getting a lot of flack, because I feel in a lot of games, like a refund button or some kind of complaint button just goes to like an email that never gets opened.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, this is painful. Yeah, after we had talked about Star Wars last week, and you said you were going to pick it up solely for the space battles, I was kind of like, that's probably not a good idea. Because
It wasn't a good
you're
idea.
so hyped on space battles. We had talked about Rogue Squadron. You wanted space battles. The space battle's not bad. It looks gorgeous. Like, the maps are good. Like,
It just plays like a brick.
it feels like you're underwater and not in space.
Yeah,
like that is one of my.
It didn't feel fast enough. Like you slowly travel along. Like you're even hitting like the accelerate your thrusters button.
Were you
You're
pushing
still
forward on
you're still going at a crawl. Like
I've seen a few videos too where guys are flying TIE fighters and they were just vibrating violently, like they were having all these weird glitches in the game.
I haven't experienced that. When you're just in space, flying, it feels like you're moving slow. When you get close to something, and to me, it's really like takes me out of the experience, and I don't know, it gives me a weird sense of like momentum shift because you get close and all of a sudden it feels like you're moving too fast. And you get close to something, the navigation's very difficult. So I was like,
there was also too like a lot of the ships too, like they all have different like abilities and equipment stuff, which is good, but only some of them. Medic.
Okay.
You see, Star Wars is just so hazardous. It's a hazard to your health.
Drowning under the water.
Drowning under the water of space. What I was gonna say was, all the different ships have different abilities that give them like say photon torpedoes or different stuff. But only a couple of ships have like extra thrusters.
Yes.
Which I was like, why isn't that available on every ship? Like, why can't I use that on an X-wing? Why does it have to be specifically on the little guys?
Yeah, that was really irritating to me as well. It should have been, because I play with a controller, I know you play with a controller, it should have been like R trigger enhances the speed of your ship.
Yeah.
All around for everybody. I think that's how the last Battlefront was, the space battles.
Everybody, like even ones that like a Y-wing wouldn't have an ability like that. Would
No, I don't.
No, the Y-wings do fly slower though, but they're meant to be bombers though.
Yeah, they're slow armored bombers.
So like
yeah.
that makes sense as to why they don't have a boost, but
A normal TIE fighter and the TIE Interceptor should both have the ability to go a little faster.
Yeah, just overall, I wasn't happy with the game, so I'm glad I got it refunded because it was going to be just a game that was going to sit on my computer that I was going to play maybe like for like this week and a half, and then I was never going to touch it again. So I'm glad I did refund it. So
That's good that their refund went so smoothly. So one positive thing we came out of this, I guess. This
well,
week.
positive for me.
Yeah, I'm gonna be playing the game a lot. Like, I got it for the whole experience. I've been playing. So my two biggest modes to gripe about are space battles for what we just kind of talked about, and hero battles. Hero battles is 4-on-4, and everybody picks one of the main Star Wars cast characters. At the beginning.
And Bosk.
And Bosk. Yeah, and Bosk. At the beginning, the rebels have Yoda, Rey, Lando, and Han Solo. And then the villains have Kylo Ren, Darth Maul, Bosk, and Boba Fett. So take a second and let those two rosters sink in. Because the villains are definitely overpowered. Like, that Boba Fett is so much better
Than
not
Han.
just the character, but the way, like, he has a jetpack, he has sonar, he has rockets. Han Solo, one of his abilities is to charge at you with his shoulder.
Yeah, I saw that. It was
What?
yeah, he has a shoulder charge. That's
Not
unheard of.
Not to mention, Han Solo and Lando looks like EA hired somebody to make wax sculptures, and then melt those sculptures. And while they were melting,
Like Indiana Jones style, like they opened up the ark and they just started melting.
then they rendered them into the game. They look ridiculous. They sound ridiculous.
Maybe they have a render machine and they mix it up with the microwave.
Yeah, maybe it's.
They had them both on at the exact same time, and they're like, "Guys, come on, we're trying to do some rendering here."
So it feels like there's a big shift in which team is better. And now when we mix in our topic here,
You got two Sith Lords there too. Like, you should at least have two Jedis, right?
we have Rey.
I guess, yeah, Rey and Yoda.
But
Okay.
she's not a Jedi yet.
Yeah, not
Yeah.
yet. She could be the last Jedi. Getting into our topic though, and this is where I felt it out of all the game modes the most. This pay to win and the controversy that is sparked from pay to win. If you have a team that's been able to unlock Darth Vader or Luke Skywalker, and now you have 3 force-using, lightsaber-wielding characters versus 2 and then 2 blaster-oriented characters, like, the team with 3 Jedis is going to clobber. Like, they just roam as a pack, separate somebody and annihilate them, and just keep going.
Well, I saw the abilities too, like with Kylo Ren, like his is freeze. Like certain areas within a certain area of him, like if you walk into it and you get hit by it, you can't do anything. You're just like,
It's like at the beginning of the movie where he stops the blaster bolt and the character from moving.
That's so cool. And it's like vibrating.
Yeah, and it makes that sound in the game. That's whenever that happens to me, I'm not mad about it. I'm glad this happened.
Good death.
Yeah, it is, and
Honorable
you're
death.
even like kind of on an angle, like you were trying to escape it. It's pretty cool. But yeah, you definitely feel the pay to win. Like, whoever was able to unlock these characters first
Right.
has an advantage in that mode. That being said, it's like the actual game came out yesterday or
Friday.
the day before.
Came out on Friday.
Yeah.
Came out yesterday.
So I had early access. It already, every time I play hero mode now, everybody has Luke and Darth Vader unlocked already. So, and I've got Luke and Darth Vader unlocked already too. So,
Well, why don't
How
we?
many characters are there to unlock?
3 for each side maybe. Darth Vader, Emperor Palpatine, and maybe there's only 2, and then the other side has Chewbacca, Luke, and Princess Organa or Leia. I don't know who the other side has. Darth.
Well, why don't we take this opportunity?
Oh, the main character from the campaign.
Let's take this opportunity to actually
Okay.
go into our actual news breakdown of this week. So we've already been talking a lot about the Battlefront 2, so let's just quickly touch on the stuff that we hadn't covered yet. Kelsy had noted, and I didn't realize it, that because of the whole Battlefront 2 mess about the too high cost of purchasing characters, that they end up having a comment that ended up being voted the most downvoted Reddit comment of all
I think
time.
it was the EA community support team put out a comment trying to defend why they were so high, saying it was like to give the players a sense of accomplishment for putting that much time investment into the game, and that got so much hate. Yeah,
Never underestimate the poison that is the internet.
Oh man.
the internet and
Or-
gamers and Star Wars fans
yeah.
is like a perfect storm of like just anger all funneled into one area.
You know what happened? They put that little comment out, and all the fans got together, and they built a space station that looked like a moon, and they blew up that comment.
That's
Yeah,
not a moon.
It got like reposted everywhere and picked up on like major news networks and stuff that
Yeah.
the new Star Wars game was in trouble kind of thing. And
Well, there was also that they tried to justify some fixes to the game by reducing the hero costs by 75%, which is not a bad thing, but somebody that I was talking to gave me a really good point that I forgot about. Even though they reduced it by 75%, what if they reduced the amount of points you earn by
they did.
75, 50%?
In the camp, in
So-
every mode they did.
So it didn't do anything. It canceled each other out. So what's the whole point of saying, "Oh yeah, we got it. We reduced everything by 75%." But
Like Paul
you
said,
reduced everything by
there's a lot
75%.
of players with those characters already. I know it's
Yeah.
anecdotal, but
I didn't pay a penny in this. Besides the initial purchase of the game, I didn't pay a penny. So I think that I'm not saying I'm a good player. I'm like middle of the pack. I've made at the end of every round there's like 5 characters, MVP, most kills, most assists, blah blah blah. I've made it on that once. But somehow I've managed, and I might have benefited from the change. So I was playing the game when they were giving you full points, and then they did the switch over. But
so did you keep all your
I
credits
kept
that you
all my
earned?
credits that I earned.
Oh, okay.
So I've played under 15 hours, and I have earned over 45,000 points. So how long did it say to earn 60?
40 hours they were estimating.
40 hours. So I am way ahead of the curve, or that guy.
I don't think that was because you said that there's some like challenges
And stuff, yeah.
I don't think it was taken into account any bonuses you get from challenges. I think that was just pure in-game credits you were earning.
And I am not the kind of player who goes into my challenges and looks at them and is like, oh, I need to go out of my way to do 18 of these in the next couple matches. I just play and I just unlock. So, like, the pay to win is not good. But people complaining about the cost of things and how long it takes to do it, I don't necessarily feel that's justified. Or maybe I benefited from.
If you would have spent those credits before they rolled it back, then you would have had to start where everyone else is.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think it sounded like you got lucky because you had the stockpile of the points when you could still get them with the 75% increase.
Yeah.
And then once everything changed, you kept all that.
Mm-hmm.
So
And then now that everything got reduced by 75%, it was just like it was a blowout sale for you, baby.
Paul's mopping up.
Black Friday.
Yeah.
I wonder if all the early access players are the ones you're seeing with all the characters unlocked then, and all the new players are.
It's
Gonna
quite
need that extra
possible.
time.
Everybody who purchased the game got 10 hours to play before the game's release, and that came out last Friday. So
And then there was anybody who got the special version got the early 3 days to play this week.
Came out on Tuesday, and then the rest of the people got to play yesterday.
Right.
Or was it today? Anyways. So I was the one that got the Tuesday release as well. So my 10 hours ran up, and I kind of planned it just as the game came out, and then I've played a couple extra hours when I've had some time this week. And yeah, I've as soon as I had 32,000 points, as soon as the reduction came, I bought Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker, and then I still have an additional. Since then I've earned another 17,000 points.
Well, what are your thoughts on the one article that came out where somebody actually sat down and they did all the math to figure out with all
That's
this
what we just mentioned.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
40 hours to unlock.
the
the
40-hour
character.
stuff because it was it was even worse. It was in order to unlock everything in the game, you would have to play the game for 6 months consecutively. Like
I don't know if I saw that one.
Oh no, this was like a couple days ago. It was you'd have to play in order to unlock everything without paying a dime. you'd have to play the game for 6 months straight. So 6 months total playtime, or they worked it out to be $2,000 worth of pay to play.
I did see that.
Which, paying $2,000 into a game that you bought for $60, $90?
Do they
What
have
the
a way
hell?
in game to, like, say I want a Darth Vader and I realize it's going to take me a ton of time or a ton of money to get. Do they have a way I can test him and go, oh, he doesn't play like I thought he would. I don't want to be Darth Vader. Do they have any demo kind of thing?
In arcade mode, actually, I think you can play as him, because I think a friend of mine, he played Darth Sidious or the Emperor through arcade mode, and he was like, he's terrible, don't buy him. I was like, okay, good to know. So, yeah, I think there is a way. Like, I've only...
And didn't they put a cap on the amount of credits you can earn in arcade mode too?
Yes.
Yes.
That's mean.
But I don't know if you reach the cap and then you spend the credits and then you go back to arcade mode to earn more credits. I don't know how that works.
For me, it sounded like it was a daily cap. Like you could only do it for a certain day, and then that's it.
That's
on
not
that
bad.
note, I wanted to share with you guys a comment that I had found underneath IGN's review for Pokemon Ultra Sun Ultra Moon, which was a nice little review.
Mm-hmm.
But I love this comment. So it was someone commented below. Wow, would you look at that? An upcoming game releasing on the 17th that isn't hardcore pay to win, doesn't lock its heroes behind ludicrous $200 plus paywalls, has a fun single player, doesn't kick you out of arcade mode because you're getting too many credits, actually lets you cancel your pre-order when you want to, and isn't a slog to play. Huh, who'da thunk it?
There's been some other examples too besides Pokemon. Like, I don't remember hearing any bad stuff about Wolfenstein 2, Super Mario Odyssey. Like,
No,
there's the only one.
Yeah, this game, for some reason, has really dropped the ball with the pay to win. And it's unfortunate because I don't feel a lot of the stuff that person that made that comment, it doesn't represent the game. It represents the negative news that's going on about the game.
That is true.
Mm-hmm.
Like the game itself, with the exception of the things we mentioned earlier in the podcast, go back and just keep listening over and over again. It plays really well. The Galactic Battle, I am having a ton of fun playing it, but it's not for everybody. Kelsey's a niche player.
I'll admit that when I played the game, it definitely feels like a cool experience. It's just it doesn't meet my requirements of the gaming, so that's why I let it go.
And
but
you're also a niche gamer as well. Like everybody's got. If you like to play Call of Duty, if you like to play Battlefield, if you like first person or third person shooters, and you like Star Wars,
this is definitely going to be right up your alley.
It's up your alley. And you have to look at the whole thing. So I'm excited to play campaign when I get there because I've heard nothing but good things at the campaign.
I've heard the complete opposite on the campaign from multiple sources, that it's really disappointing and the third act in it has no resolution and it's just not an interesting story.
The only thing I'm interested about the campaign is that it's being
canonized.
It's becoming canonized. That actually is officially the story of after Return of the Jedi and before or some point to the next Star Wars movie that we're getting right now. Like they're actually making it canon. So I'm waiting to like sit down, find a YouTube compilation and someone's put it all together as like a movie thing. I'm gonna just sit down and watch
Paul's
it.
gonna act it out next podcast.
Well, maybe
One man show.
I'll Twitch it for you. Okay. Specifically you. No
Specifically
one else.
just me.
Yeah.
Private show.
Private, yikes.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it if you're looking to get everything the game is offering, I think it's worth it.
We didn't mention the newest thing too, where they actually just dropped all of the in-game purchases.
Yes. Yeah.
For now.
Temporarily.
Temporarily they shut down all the
day before
in-game.
it came out. That is crazy. I don't think that's ever happened before in a video game launch where they've made such a drastic change the day before it came out.
And that's an even bigger slap in the face than releasing the game with it. Because now you have people who decided to buy the game on the game it released, and you had all these people paying to win. So, like, now even if you wanted to get ahead and pay to win, because you find yourself so far behind, which I've not had a problem with.
Or you find yourself just so lazy to go through and do the actual challenges and stuff.
And that's a big, like, point for me is I think
go grab your mom or dad's credit card and go and spend that $2,000 to unlock everything. Oh wait, now I can't do that.
EA was trying to pander to too big of a crowd and be like, there's going to be the hardcore gamers, there's going to be the Star Wars fans. We got them. There's going to be the first-person shooter fans. We got them. Now it's those people who are on the fence that are lazy and not going to put the time in. Hook them in. Let's get them somehow.
I think overall, like to sum up this news story stuff on Battlefront, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with other games going forward, because there's already it's Belgium that's looking into Battlefront and
a few
Overwatch
other countries now too.
Yeah.
For is loot boxes considered gambling? Which I'll leave that. We'll leave that for a discussion for another time. But my quick thought on that is, loot boxes in Overwatch is like buying a pack of like a booster pack cards.
Yeah, and we touched on this last week.
So it's not really gambling, but it kind of is in its own way. So it's a big gray area that I think we can definitely discuss later on.
Yeah. The other thing too is a lot of reports are saying that the reason EA pulled the transactions is because Disney stepped in and said, this was supposed to be like a big shining moment for us with
hyping our movie in a month.
And we're getting so much negative publicity. You need to remove microtransactions.
That would not go. I would not.
I hope that whatever contract they've got, like Disney doesn't renew it. I hope they let other companies do Star Wars, which I think I mentioned last week. I'd love to see more people's vision of Star Wars than just EA's. So I don't mind if EA still does games. I'd just rather have other people doing it as well as EA.
Well, and it sounds like Disney's kind of done messing around with giving people
control of stuff.
Yeah, so it's like Star Wars 3, we had problems with the directors. J.J. Abrams was back, everybody else is out. This new guy did a really good job on Star Wars Last Jedi.
The next trilogy.
He's going to get his own trilogy. The thing with the Han Solo movie, they had so many problems with it. It's like bringing Ron Howard. We'll just nail it down and get it done. So it sounds like they went through an experimental stage, which everybody goes through. And now they've really nailed it down. They've really matured in their Star Wars ways. I hope because I think we mentioned last time as well, they're kind of being jackasses in the theater realm too. So I don't know, they're not getting good publicity just in general for Star Wars right now. Yep.
So let's move on to some other news stories, since we've gone so in depth into Star Wars.
I could talk about it all day.
No, we're not. Our other story, interesting stuff, is for our listeners of previous podcasts. You may have heard us talking about a story that GameStop was introducing a rental program. It seems this week they put a stop to that. They put a halt on the used game program without stating why. It's very curious as to what happened, because the news article, there was no comment from GameStop as to why they were pulling it. The only article was that there were some GameStop employees who basically got a phone call and were told, take that stuff down right now.
Yeah, it's so bizarre that they wouldn't put out a comment why.
And that was... Oh, go ahead.
The only speculation I've seen is that there's a few people that think their computer system is too outdated to run what they need to have this program in place.
Yeah, that would make sense. Because that story dropped about 4 or 5 days ago, and there has been nothing. Nothing since that original comment, which to me is odd. There's no, like you said, there's no speculation. There's no more further insight to why this is happening.
And they probably just got overshadowed by Battlefront too. No one cares about other things right now.
That's true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe they're waiting for after Christmas, because let people buy games. We've still got Christmas coming up.
Let people buy the Star Wars,
and then trade
it back in, and then, hey, that Star Wars game you weren't sure about? Why don't you rent it?
I don't think it's a timing thing though. They've been in business long enough, they would know Christmas season. You don't even have to be in business to know Christmas season's a spending season. So
I don't know.
It's definitely not a timing thing.
Companies get excited about stuff like that, and then they drop the ball. Look at Battlefront.
It'll be interesting to see what happens with that later on, if it's going to get revived, or if there's actually going to be an official comment as to why they're delaying it. But of course, we'll get the obvious PR. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I wonder if they'll just canned answer.
I wonder if they'll just sweep it under the rug and no one will ever hear about this again. It'll just disappear.
Yeah, that's true.
In 20 years, on episode
12,
642, episode 12.
Whatever happened to that GameStop thing?
Yeah, exactly. We'll bring it back. Episode 12 will be our revival show.
No, we'll do so many episodes that the timer will just reset. So we'll hit 999 and it'll just go back to 1.
It's so bad. It went so far past 0. We're at 12 again.
Some of the other stuff that we had interesting here is kind of our last story. Nintendo is in talks to finally make an animated Mario movie.
I don't know how to be excited about this.
Yeah, I don't know. Because it's not going to be the Mario movie I want. It's not even going to be the Mario movie I deserve.
Well, here's the question though, because with Mario Odyssey doing so well, would they maybe be looking maybe making it like that style? Like look at like all the cutscenes that were in Mario Odyssey. Like they looked gorgeous. They could make those parts into a movie, but then they just gotta dub all the voice lines and everything.
It would make a fine like kids movie, but I'm an adult who grew up with Mario. I want a cool movie that I would like, because I could see them hopping from kingdom to kingdom. That gives them a ton of content. There's a lot of cool places they can visit, but it just seems very G-rated for like my like 8 to 10-year-old kind of thing.
If they're gonna make a Mario movie, it has to be made a feature-length movie. It has to be made to pander to an adult crowd that grew up with it. But it has to be inviting enough. Like, the main target audience should be 15 to
25.
Kelsey's like 43, so 15 to 43.
Not even close.
It should pander to that crowd and be inviting enough for young kids to get into it.
And they're getting the studio that did the Minions movie to work on this, which doesn't. Yeah, I feel like it's gonna be like Mario Rabbids the movie, basically.
Yeah, if they want to make a Mario entertainment property for youth, it should be a TV show.
Yeah, it should be like a Netflix version. Like, let's have Mario come out and just skirt Sonic Boom under the rug and
totally. And they're like doing theme parks and stuff like really, really soon. So I don't know why they wouldn't make some kind of deal with Universal and tie in a TV show to the theme park.
Yeah, a movie. And the other thing too is like,
well, here's a question though: does Universal own that movie, the production company though?
I don't know actually. Yeah, it's good
because
idea.
That is a possibility, because if Universal is already a parent company to that, then
do you think we'll see a Mario Minions game down the road?
Definitely, absolutely. It'll be like Pikmin.
As long as you get to ground pound them like a Goomba and just snuff them out of existence.
Snuff them out of existence. Clip that.
Oh God, can you imagine if you use Mario's hat to take over a minion?
I'm not interested.
No.
And the other thing too is a TV show lends better to the uncannoned, messed universe that is Mario, because there's like, how do you make a movie out of Mario? There's no story really behind why everything is the way it is. That's why a movie needs to pander to an older crowd, because it could just, we'll take it at face value. It's like, yeah, Mario's there, cool.
Miyamoto said several times there is no Mario canon.
Could we get like a Super Mario movie, but it's all like film noir style, or it's like, the princess comes in with the trench coat. It's like, I got a job for you.
I'd like to see.
Come in, sounds like Detective Pikachu.
Yeah, exactly. I'd like to see a Mario movie that's set between like the real world and some kind of prehistoric like other dimension world that has Dennis Hopper's Bowser, and dinosaurs, John Leguizamo.
Stop. Paul,
they have to CG Dennis Hopper now. He's dead, so it's gonna be Tarkin.
Paul, we don't speak of that movie. That movie is
I
dead.
like that movie.
The only thing that movie was good for was when everybody freaked out because he puts a little bomb down like the size of like a quarter, and everyone's like, "It's a bomb! Run!"
And the jump boots. They tried to ground it too much with reality.
Oh yeah, they went overboard in a couple aspects. Fungus everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. I saw that movie in theater as a child.
Lucky.
And I remember it was really busy. I don't know what other movie was playing in the theater at the time, because where I lived it was just a 2-screen theater. And we were coming out. This is my big Mario. This is what I remember from Mario. We were coming out of the theater, and there was like double doors, and one of the doors was shut, and it was glass, and the other one was open, and everybody was filing out. My mom wasn't paying attention and ran
into the glass
door. Oh, I was a terrible child.
That's what Paul remembers most about the Mario
Yeah,
Brothers
it was
movie.
just-
Well, that and the what was it, the 3D generated Yoshi that looked like he was like taken out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah, that was
Toad.
Clever girl.
clever.
The Goombas. What the hell were the Goombas?
Yeah, what were the Goombas? Yeah, that was.
I like the camp though. Like people crap on that movie all the time, and rightfully so. But all of us have seen it. We're all nostalgic for it.
well, I
I'm
think
okay with them
it's-
doing another really
I think-
terrible movie like that.
I'd be
I think
fine
it's
with
an
it, too.
example of it's one of those movies that it's such a bad movie that it's good, but it's still bad.
Like it went so far past 0. It came back
to
around.
12.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like the Double Dragon movie.
Yep.
It's not good, but I love it. It's
fine.
Street Fighter.
Yeah.
It's not a good movie, but I love it.
I watched that very recently, actually.
Yeah, good.
Mortal
Did I
Kombat's-
did you take my copy of it?
No, I have it already.
Did you?
Yeah, got it on Blu-ray.
What movie were we gonna watch that you took that I
I
had?
took a lot of your movies, so I don't know. Is that Ninja Scroll or something like that?
No,
probably?
there was a movie, and I was like, we have to watch that together. And you're like, okay.
Something about zombies and
Tokyo
ninjas.
Zombie,
It might have been that one.
Jiu-Jitsu Masters versus zombies.
Yeah.
Anywho, moving on. Moving on to our main topic for discussion here. So today we are talking remasters, remakes, and re-releases. I guess the first thing is probably just what are our feelings on games being remastered or re-released?
I think those are two different terms. Re-released, I'm almost always okay with because they usually just take the original source material and update it to play on something new, which,
Like the Super Nintendo Mini.
yeah, you get a
Re-released.
bigger audience, you get a
Yeah.
new way to play it on new technology, so you don't have to have your old CRT around to play things properly.
And you don't have to, like, spend a fortune getting the original cartridge.
Yeah, like on
a
the
game.
Super NES Mini, like just Earthbound alone makes
Yeah.
it more than worth the investment if you want that one
I think
particular game.
that was definitely like a reason why I got the Super NES Mini was because it has Earthbound. It has like I was looking at all the games that were on it, and I was like, I already own half of these games, but the other half of the games I don't have, these are like starting price $70 a cartridge kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Whereas
yeah, it was definitely a worthwhile investment.
Where I think remasters, they try and change things. So sometimes those get a little messy for me where I'm not as happy. I even like when they keep in old problems and glitches as long as they're not game breaking. If those are what were in the original game, like I feel like you don't fix those. You keep them there. You just, you make it work on your HD TV and maybe improve the frame rate or whatever. But when they start messing around with games, or even in some reboot cases when they like totally redo the game from the ground up, gets a little gray area for me.
Yeah. I'm sure there's more out there that I remember being good or not, like ruining my original take on the game, but re-release, I'm fine with, like Kelsy said, for all the same points Kelsy said, like it reaches a broader audience, it gives people a chance to play it again, like so many benefits to having a re-release, remasters. I feel there's a certain time frame of games that really work for being remastered, and it's like the original PlayStation era of games, maybe even like the Sega CD, where like they were trying to do things that just the system couldn't do at the time.
You talking about like early 3D, like full motion video, like
Yeah. And one of my I know we're gonna get to this later, but one of my biggest things, Resident Evil remastered for the GameCube originally came out, and then they did it again.
so good.
It's maybe one of the best remasters ever done, I think.
I made a list of ones that I felt were the best. That's on my list for sure.
Yeah, and there's a lot of games from that generation, like the first 3 Resident Evil games. Metal Gear.
They're remaking Resident Evil 2 right now as well.
Oh, I'm
Very excited.
That's
That's
so
my
exciting.
favorite Resident Evil.
Yeah. Yeah, so remasters there is a place for remasters. There is a generation of games to be remastered. But things like DuckTales.
I liked that, but it was totally different from the old one.
Yeah.
Like I don't feel like they're connected at all, even though they're obviously the same levels and stuff. They made it into a different property completely.
Yeah. It looks good, it plays good, but they changed the music. It's not the same game. It's not.
And you
I
just-
love the original DuckTales.
Adding all that story in that the original didn't have. Like you would talk to your kid and get maybe 2 sentences out of them in the old one, whereas this time you'd sit through a cutscene, and it was adding story that you didn't necessarily need and a tutorial level that you definitely didn't need.
But hang on, by playing devil's advocate to that though, but what about the the love that was put in it, because like they got brought back the original cast of DuckTales to voice their characters.
And
like that's a nice little
that did that one puts a lot of care into their ports. They don't they're a good company if you want your game made like updated for new generation. I would go with WayForward most of the time.
Because I know with my experience, like with remasters and remakes and stuff, there are certain protocols and certain things that I find that deems it a well worth thing to buy. For example, with recently I bought the .hack GU. I guess it's hard to determine if it's a remaster or a re-release, because
that's like a collection as well.
It's hard to determine because it still is the original 3 games. The content itself hasn't changed. They did eliminate some stuff that made the game play too long, so they didn't eliminate anything that breaks the game. They did try to make it a little bit smoother, but all the cutscenes and everything are still exactly the same. They do put a warning in there that sometimes some of the cutscenes are just rendered out from the original version, so they do give you that warning ahead of time, but they actually don't look too bad. But you can tell that it was obviously an HD re-release of a PS2 game, but I do like that they actually included an episode 4 that they actually never had enough room for on the original discs. So they not only did they give me the old ones, but they gave me something new with it.
I think it's just the nature of RPGs getting remade is that they're so much bigger. They can't really mess around with them from the ground up like they do with a lot of other genres. Where like I think Final Fantasy VII that they're working on now is the only example I can think of where they're totally restructuring the whole game. Whereas everything else like Kingdom Hearts, Final Fantasy X, the .hack games, like they just add the new thing, maybe put a feature in where you can like speed or slow down something. But other than adding like a couple new features, they don't change the core game. Just because I think it's too challenging to do and too expensive in most cases.
But then also looking at other stuff towards the argument here too, what happens when we see the same game released too many times? Because like say let's use for example Super Mario 64 came out in the N64, and then they re-released it on the Nintendo DS, which had some new stuff in it, and they did change some stuff around. But then we also had
drastically different.
But then we also had Virtual Console re-release, another Virtual Console re-release, just on and on and on. Like
Can
how
I give you
many
a more
times?
current example? Skyrim.
Sure.
It's coming out for like the 7th time, like very very shortly here.
Sure.
And that's not that old of a game.
And what was the newest edition on Skyrim? They put in Legend.
Switch just came out, but there's
Switch
PlayStation
and
VR
Legend,
one coming out right away. Too.
Switch and Legend of Zelda content in the Switch version.
Yep.
And then now you said a VR one. So like it does it really justify re-releasing that game over and over?
Is it a re-release if it's coming out for a console for the first time?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Because now it's giving people, Nintendo fans.
Yeah, Nintendo's never had this game, so that's a whole several million.
That's a whole
people
new market.
have access to it. Yeah.
So, like Skyrim may not be the best example. Mario is a good example. One of the like big ones that jumps out for me is Street Fighter. Like every version of like Street Fighter 2 had like 7 versions of it. Street Fighter 4 every year it had.
Yeah, there was 3 retail versions of that one.
Yeah,
And that's not just Street Fighter. That's just fighting games in general.
Fighting games in general are really bad for
but
that.
I would say good.
But would you
that.
consider
like
those remasters, because even though it was the same game, they put a lot of more new content in it as well as rebalancing and stuff.
I'd say it's
so like
re-releases.
where do you set that line that this thing is a re-release because we haven't touched anything on it, we're just updated it to play on a newer console? That's a re-release. But if they change anything on it, does that make it a remake?
I want to ask Paul a specific question about Street Fighter 2 too. When you've got that many iterations of it, and you go from like Street Fighter 2 to Street Fighter 2 Turbo, they're a little different. But when you get to like Street Fighter 2 to like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, they're vastly different.
Vastly different
What
games.
point down the line of releases does the game change and become a new game?
Yeah, that's hard to say. Like, is Street Fighter 2... What was the original release? World Warrior or Championship Edition? World Warrior, I think.
I think so.
Is it a different game than Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo?
I
Yes.
think it is.
It plays...
I feel like 3 times the roster.
plays faster. It's
Yeah.
tighter. There's new moves.
There's
Like
tons of different options of play.
it's a hard question. Like that more so than like Dustin saying like what's the difference between a remaster and a re-release. To me, a re-release is like the core game just being released again with a couple things added on, like your dot hack. To me, that's a re-release, and they've just tacked on some.
Even though it's got a whole chapter of new content, that's
Yep.
a significant addition.
Or maybe there's even a third category, like the collection releases, because that would be
Like God of War, Nyko,
Yeah.
Shadow of the Colossus,
Yeah.
Devil May Cry. There's a ton of those. It's like
Yeah.
Hooper, Ratchet and Clank.
Right, yeah, because the God of War, like the I think it was the PS3 re-releases.
They put
God
on
of War
multiple
1 and
collections.
2,
Yeah.
1 and 2, and came with God of War 3 for PS3 already. They weren't remasters; they literally were just re-releases.
And then they threw the PSP ones up on there in a separate collection. And
So what is a remaster? An overhaul of? To me, a remaster is an overhaul of graphics.
yeah, and maybe a couple features
Yeah.
like your Wind Waker HD had like the speed up in the boat section, or
Yeah.
the Final Fantasy 12 Zodiac had the speed up sections too.
Resident Evil had
But
better
they're not
graphics.
they're not invasive additions.
But
I
then,
guess.
but
It's
then the
like-
question is still then: at what point do you determine it to be a re-release, and what point do you be a remaster? Because people could argue that Wind Waker HD was a remaster because they did tweak it
I would
enough.
call that a remaster
it's
because
a
it has a new
remaster.
features in it.
But then people can also argue that it's still exactly the same game.
I wouldn't say exactly, because if you change mechanics, I think
Yeah.
that changes the game,
Yeah.
even if it's only a part of the game. I think as soon as mechanics change, it becomes something different than just a regular re-release. Whether you want to call that a reboot, remaster, whatever. Core gameplay mechanics, because that's what games are. They're focused around their gameplay. With maybe a few exceptions that are more story driven. You mess around with those, you've changed the game significantly enough that it's not the same as it used to be.
Okay. Then to put this out to discussion, then what would you consider the Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy that just got released a little while ago? Because
I definitely wouldn't call that a re-release. That's like a remake, basically.
Because it was the gameplay itself is still exactly the same. The only thing the only
the
thing
developers
updated,
have specifically said they made the new game harder than the old game on purpose.
oh, okay.
They have changed it. Yeah.
Because I do know the one thing was like it was HD graphics on it.
Yeah.
But they did change. I believe it was how Crash interacted with his environment, because the original PlayStation had, I can't remember what they call it. It was the polygons they didn't have sloping. They just were like just straight on. So like even though if I have say a bent board, the hitbox on it still extends past the
Right.
point of the curvature.
The 90
So
degree.
that's why Crash was able to jump on stuff that technically he shouldn't be able to jump on. But since they changed the curvature of it in the re-release or the remake, that it actually drastically changed it. So a lot of people are like, this game is really hard. And I look at them and go, yes, it was really hard. It's even harder now.
Yeah. They've changed the core of the game, so I would totally consider that something different than a re-release, probably a remaster, remake.
Yeah, it gets into weird territory now where we have to define what a re-release is.
If you're trying to put modern
A really hard
game
time saying
development
re-release.
tropes into an old game, you've changed that game. It's not a re-release anymore.
Yeah.
Like when they do things like the Virtual Console and like buying like games off the PlayStation Now and stuff, where they're basically just emulating old games. If it's running through an emulator type system, then that's just a standard re-release.
Anything on Virtual Console is a really good example of that. Like Contra 3 Alien Wars.
Yeah, you
That's
still
a
got your
re-release.
slowdown, then you're still the re-release. If you've put new development techniques into it to get rid of that slowdown, then you've changed it to something else.
Yep. Super Nintendo Mini is a re-release of old games.
Then to put it out to the discussion here, then what do you think like the pros and cons of re-releasing or remastering games are? Because like obviously the one pro obviously is that if there's a game that comes out that you never got a chance to play when it came out, and it is like we were saying, like with Earthbound and stuff, like I've never played Earthbound, but now I have it, I could play it.
Yeah.
That's an awesome opportunity. But what are some of the cons about this? Like, are we seeing this game over and over and over? Like I bought a brand new Switch. Do I really need to pay, an extra $10 to re-download this game again, even though I bought it on my Wii U?
I don't see that as a con because, especially working at the store, I get to talk to like 10 and 13-year-old kids that are excited about games that I was excited about 20, 30 years ago. So they didn't have the chance to get that. And they can still, come in and buy a Nintendo and Super Mario Bros. 3. But if they've already got a Switch at home and they just want to spend $10 instead of the $70, $80 to get that whole setup, they can still enjoy it. So I'd definitely see that as a pro. I don't know if you can oversaturate it. Like, people are still buying Skyrim, and that's not that old. It's come out a ton of times. It's sold ridiculous every single time it's come out. People don't seem to be oversaturated with that. So I'm trying to think of an example where something's come out too often and it's actually hurt people in any way.
It also probably depends on like what kind of a collector you are too, because like
Yeah.
if say if it was a re-release of the Metroid stuff, like I would probably want every single thing of Metroid, even though they like, oh hey, we re-released Metroid Prime again. Okay, I want it. I want it again.
Yeah.
And then a year later, hey, we re-released Metroid Prime again. And I was like, okay guys, you're gonna keep getting money out of me, but it's getting really tired. But they haven't done that yet. I wish they would re-release Metroid Prime on the Switch though.
Yeah,
but.
I think that'd be awesome. I'd probably get a Switch if they did a bunch of Metroid re-releases.
But like you said, like what is an example of something where maybe they've redone it too many times, or it's just like,
Street
guys, kill it.
The
Besides Street Fighter.
I don't agree with that. I like having things physically. So having the Street Fighter re-releases as options, I bought all 3 of the PS4 Street Fighter 4 games, and I'd rather do that than buy characters digitally.
Yeah.
It's the reason I haven't been keeping up with Street Fighter 5, or one of the reasons is I don't want these things digitally. I'm waiting for them to put out a new version with these
Hard
things
copy
on
of it.
disc. Yeah.
Which you are getting, I think it's
No,
January.
they're not going to have the characters
arcade
on them.
edition.
It's got all the modes and stuff on them. You still got to buy the Season 2 to get the characters. So
That's
it's
dumb.
not what I want.
Yeah, that's not good.
You have to wait for next year for the full
Yeah.
And
version.
I'll wait for that. And then it'll be current for 6 months, and then I'll be in the same position I'm in now.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't. In this day and age, people have the internet to go to as well. So if something comes out, they can do their due diligence and do some research on it and find out, they're like Skyrim's coming out again. I played it before. I bought another version of it. Does this offer anything for me? Do I like it? Is it, people can do the research, and it shouldn't hurt anybody. I don't think there's any cons into.
The only type of person I can think that would think of this as a con is a collector going, I just spent $200 on my Earthbound. Now everyone can get it for $80. That stinks for me.
But that's
I don't agree with that. And as a collector and someone who has Earthbound, I want more people to play it.
Yeah.
I don't.
Well,
Because
I-
that drives the cartridge that you have up in price.
I don't. Price is irrelevant to this. I want more people to love games. So
Yeah.
if I spent a couple $100 on something and it drops half the price, I'm not upset with that. I still have my original copy. It doesn't take anything away from me. It just gives more value to more people.
But re-releases aren't going to hurt an original copy of something.
They haven't yet. I can't find a single example. There's been a few where they've dipped really temporarily, like Marvel vs. Capcom 2 had a slow drop and it's climbed right back up to where it was before.
Well, like you said, it just, I guess it depends on a person. Like, what are your limits on collecting? Because, like, for me, for example, like, I'm not a person who has to have, like, say, using Metroid again for an example here. I don't have to have Metroid in every single box, every single manual, everything detailed, like, kept pristine.
Do you even like Metroid then, Dustin? Really?
But if I get a copy of Metroid just as a cartridge only, or actually, hang on, let me try it. Mega Man Battle Network. That's actually one that I actually can say that, because I still have a couple of the original ones that I bought them. It's still in box, but some of the previous ones that I never got a hold of, I found as a cartridge only through the store, and I was like, you know what, I'm good with that, as a for my collection anyway.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there are other collectors out there, maybe some bigger Mega Man collectors, are like, no, I want it in the box. I want the whole thing with me. I'm fine with just the cartridge because then I have the game.
My rule of thumb is usually it has to have an end label. So Game Boy games don't have end labels. They need boxes so I can find them on the shelf easier. Easy as that.
Yeah, I like that.
I don't know. Paul, your thought? Pro, cons?
I think there's only pros to it, unless they butcher the game. Final Fantasy VII, I'm very worried about.
Were you one of those people when they made the first announcement where you're like, yes, this looks amazing, and then the more info you got,
No.
Oh, I was so into that right away, and then the more they tell me about it, the less interested I am.
Do you recall when the PS3 came out? And
Yeah.
they had
Yeah.
the technical demo of this is what
Yeah.
Final
Oh,
Fantasy
yeah.
VII's
Yeah.
intro
Yeah.
would look like, and I can recall the amount of people just freaking out. Oh my god, we're getting Final Fantasy VII, and I'll go, oh no, time out. They said that's what it would look like
Same
if it was
thing.
running on the PS, and they're still like, no. They said they're going to re-release it.
Same
They're
thing
gonna
happened for Zelda. I think it was GameCube when they showed that Link fighting like
Oh.
the spider thing, and they were like, "This is gonna be the next Zelda game. It's so dark, it's so cool." And then they're like, "No, that was like a tech demo, just showing
Yeah.
off some hardware. Like that game's not ever happening."
Oh right, because that was before the Wii, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Final Fantasy is a sore spot. I didn't get excited because the original core game is so good, and I guess that comes down to, people probably like the original Resident Evil, and we're like, oh no, the new one changes it so much. It's not a good game.
I've never heard that defense.
Neither have I. But I'm
I
just
imagine
saying it
it's
could
out
be
there, but
it could
I've
be.
never
Well,
heard it.
could it also be
person
like
say
for Final Fantasy stuff? Could it be also because the fans have gone in depth on it so much? Because like considering they've gone through the one cutscene, it's like, why can't I use a Phoenix down to bring Eris back?
Yeah.
Like why is she dead? Or going so far in deep that people are like, oh hey, the way that Sephiroth killed her wouldn't actually have killed her, but Cloud put her in the water and essentially drowned her. So Cloud is actually the one responsible for killing
Well,
her.
using a Phoenix down, your characters only get knocked out. Finger quotations.
Yeah, they're not
In battle, they're not
dead.
dead.
They're
Sephiroth
unconscious.
ran her through with a giant katana. It was the only thing that went out of its way to show somebody definitively get.
I'm sure there's a healing potion that'll
You know,
heal that up.
I don't.
Here's my take on those
Sensu
two
beams
franchises
only bring you back
specifically.
from close death. They don't
What,
resurrect
what
you.
about Resident Evil? I got some green herb spray. Shh. All right,
But
I'm
you're-
not zombified anymore.
But that's different than being different. If like a zombie shot you in the brain, shot you as the player in the face with a gun, you're not gonna be like, oh, I'm just gonna use some green spray and come back to life. No, it's a cure for zombification. It helps cure wounds. It doesn't cure death.
Go ahead,
Here's
go
my
ahead,
take on
Kelsy.
those two franchises getting remakes. Resident Evil has a through story that goes through each game, so the series has progressed since the first one. So they're taking an old property and trying to catch it up to the rest of them. Whereas Final Fantasy is all, for the most part, one-off games. You don't get that progression with the,
Yeah.
I haven't.
That's
Cloud.
they
They did have the one, the Dirge Cerberus game with
Vincent.
Vincent, which is
Well, and they also
drastically different style.
Well, they also had Crisis Core too for PSP,
Was
which
it?
was the prequel to number 7.
right.
Yeah,
So
that's
maybe
right. Yeah.
they don't seem as story focused on the main plot and the main characters though.
Right. Because I think the only one that was maybe something like that was maybe Final Fantasy 13 because it started with Lightning's
That
original
had
story,
3 games in it. That had
and then a
character
story after,
progression.
and then another
Yeah.
story after.
But
Well,
those
they
all
had
came
10
out in
and
the
10-2
same.
as well.
They came out in the same generation too, which I think helps. Whereas the Resident Evil games span generations too.
And I don't know if this is still true, but when they announced Final Fantasy VII Remake, they said we're going to release it in
episodes.
Ugh.
and every episode is going to introduce
Loot boxes.
new mechanics to the game, and like every episode is going to be noticeably different than the previous episode. So it's like we're giving a movie franchise to different directors.
So
And every bit of
so
it-
is the first so in theory it would be like the first episode is the original Final Fantasy like typical turn-based
Yeah.
RPG, and then the next one comes out, oh hey, we did Final Fantasy the newer style where you can just run around and do the attacks this time, and people are going to be like, what happened?
I
That's-
don't want Final Fantasy 15 in my Final Fantasy.
Well, that's what
7.
they said was going to happen. You know, if it spans over 8 episodes, every episode's going to be different. There might be a little bit of different animation to it. It's like it's going to be different games, but just the story continues. I don't want that.
I don't either.
The original Final Fantasy game is so good. It's like Earthbound. They haven't redone the original. Like, they don't need to. They don't need to do Final Fantasy again because the play style and the graphics add to the experience you're having.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Resident Evil, it's like a fluid moving game with no turn-based combat.
The-
where
We both, I think, agree that this one looks terrible, but at the same time, if they gave it that like Resident Evil remake kind of same formula to something that I really liked, like Final Fantasy VII, I'd be into that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, if they polished it and added a couple new things that didn't damage the story or change what the game is, like the mechanics of the game, stuff like that.
But they did change it in Resident Evil. They took that camp out and they made it scary and tense, and they added new enemies in. Like, they put a significant amount of change in it, and it's still really good. Both games exist, and both are good for different reasons.
But Resident Evil 1 wanted to be what the remake is, but because of graphical limitations, they couldn't.
Terrible voice acting and writing.
Yeah.
And
So like the camp,
You, the master of unlocking.
the camp's there not because they wanted it to be. The camp's there because that's the only chance they had, the only option they had. Final Fantasy 7 is pretty perfect. Like, it's made pretty well where, like, I can't think of anything. Like, there's no voice acting. All the dialogue's fine. All the cutscenes still look good, and they, you know, lends to each other.
The one issue I remember having, even when I initially played the game, was the same thing that I was complaining about with Cinemora earlier, is I was having just trouble distinguishing background graphics from actual characters. So I'd be in a city, I'd be supposed to find a person, and I couldn't find them, and I'd walk past them 10 times just because the graphics were pretty terrible.
I can't remember... It's the city with a cannon on it, on the ocean.
Cannon City.
Is it Cannon City?
I don't know.
It's Final Fantasy VII.
It's
where they
been
shoot
too
in
long.
a weapon. And
I know the
sinks
area, I
into the
can't
sea.
remember names.
And you fight that, like, sea dragon on the beach, and you're supposed to go into the water, and the dolphin launches you up onto, like, the catwalk or whatever. Trying to line up where the dolphin's going to hit you to get up because of the way it was really hard. That could use a little bit of a boost, but
Yeah, there's minor tweaks. Like, I don't want any major changes.
yeah. So
Well, as you guys are saying about too, like with the remaking, whatnot, and everything, does maybe redoing, say, the gameplay of it, like redoing it, maybe benefit people? Because like somebody like me back in that PlayStation era, I didn't play many RPGs. Like, to me, RPGs, it was the stereotype of they were all turn-based RPG. I have to sit there, wait my turn to do attack and stuff. While like I like more like modern RPG stuff where it's like live action stuff. Like, I'm in control of my character. I'll leave my other characters to do what they need or command them to do stuff. But for me, when that era came out, I wasn't a big fan of turn-based RPGs, which is why I never played the original Final Fantasy VII. I know a lot about the content because being a gamer and stuff, I know about that story and stuff. But do you think that it's going to be hard because it's going to drive a wedge in between fans here? But should they stay with the core, or should they experiment and try to make it a little more modern style?
shame on you. Play Final Fantasy VII and eat your broccoli. Moving on.
There's an argument to be made there where you might increase the audience by updating it. I think that's why movies that do re-releases get crapped on, though. Like when you remake like Total Recall and RoboCop and stuff, and they're terrible because you're trying to make them into modern tastes when that's not where the content lies. I think there's too much of a disconnect there to try and update some of these games.
That's probably like the ultimate coin flip thing, though, because like how do you decide, okay, this is as far as we can do to experiment, but this is how far we got to stay in order to keep the original fans happy.
There's definitely a fine line there.
But then it comes to why. So if you are interested in a game, go back and play that game. If they're going to change it so much,
now,
it's a different game,
what if it's a really...
then just make a new game, because you're going to bastardize it. They didn't make the game to work in that context. You know what I mean? Like, they didn't make it to work in a 3D flowing environment. It's
right,
made
because it was technical limitations at the time.
Yeah.
While maybe remastering it now, using the technology that's available, they can make it the way they originally envisioned.
But it might not work. Like, they could have done it back then. Star Ocean did it, where their battles were on a plane and you could run around and your other guys are doing whatever. It's made to be played that way. Play it that way.
I think another thing,
if you want a game that is fluid motion, play a newer game. If you're interested in it, go back and play it.
If you're remaking a game too, how much of that original dev team do you have involved with the new one?
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes a big difference too.
That's actually a good question.
Yeah,
Because
you can
let's say like if they decide, oh, we're going to remaster or recreate Mega Man, is Capcom going to go out of the way to bring Inafune back? Because as far as I know, they had a bad falling out with each other.
They did the last 2 Legacy collections without him, and I think specifically Legacy Collection 2 really suffered. They've just put that out with no love and care into it, and whereas the first one, Inafune definitely was involved with it, but you could tell that the team loved Mega Man and wanted to put some elbow grease into that and do it properly, and that was lost in the Legacy Collection too.
But that's more of a state of Capcom in nowadays.
But like in general, though, like Kelsey's point, like how many of the original staff who worked on it are there?
Yeah.
How many people are new people who never touched it?
You need those driving forces saying like, this is what we wanted to do back then, we couldn't. Let's try it now. Whereas having people that weren't involved with it just saying, I think this is what he might have wanted, and it might be totally different. Could make a significant difference to it.
But even somebody going, I think this is what he may have wanted, is better than the way I look at the new Mega Man Legacy Collection is Capcom's like I said, this is the state of Capcom. Here's a quick way to make a buck.
Yeah,
throw some money.
People want this. We don't know what to do.
If Capcom gave it to a team that was like, well, we want to make it that, this is maybe what he would have wanted. At least they're putting thought into it, and we would have seen that carry over. Whereas, like, to me, the Legacy Collection 2 was just a money grab.
Yeah, right. Like if they actually took say what Sonic Team recently did with Sonic Mania, where they got a hold of those guys who were creating their own fan version of a lot of love and elbow grease into original Sonic, and they're like, you know what, guys, let's bring you in and we'll let you do that with the actual stuff.
That's such a cool example because it's not the original dev team. It's just people that are so passionate about the property that they're putting love and care into it, not just trying to make a buck.
And the good thing about living in the age we do, Mega Man's a great example. Like, there's people who have independently. Mega Man vs. Street Fighter was awesome.
It's so cool.
They did Mega Man Infinite is like a super hard version of Mega Man. And it's done so well with really good level design.
Mega Man like Mario Maker kind of thing.
Mega Man Mario Maker is awesome. Like I said, it's the state of not only Capcom but many other companies where it's just like, well, we live in an age where we can make a quick buck and just push this out digitally, and somebody's gonna buy it. It costs us no money to slap it together. We're not adding anything.
Maybe kind of on that subject there, kind of moving on to our next question here. When is the optimal time that we should wait before a game gets re-released?
Like a remastered, polished version of it. Like, let's say Earthbound were to come out and they were.
It's going to be subject to your own discretion here, but I think for argument's sake here, I think we'd have to say is like the core mechanic of the game will not be changed. Maybe it'll be a graphical increase and maybe 1 or 2 little things put in. Like at what time do we put a game out?
I think as long as you're on a different console generation, it's okay to update it because you've gone 5 to 7 years. You've got a whole new audience of people that may not have been around for the PS3, Xbox 360, Wii. So throwing a new game on the Wii U, Switch, Xbox One, PS4, I got no issue with that. Same with different platforms too.
Like I think the best time to do it is your anniversaries. A 10-year anniversary, a 15-year anniversary, 2025.
Especially if you want to add some extra content to it, it's cool fan service to like here's some old art cells, here's some unreleased music, like throw some extra goodies on there.
Because when did Super Street Fighter 2 HD Remix come out? Was that the 20-year anniversary? It could have been the 20-year anniversary. And I really like that. They changed the art style. They added some stuff. I guess it was a great game. Still is a great game.
Mm-hmm. But then what about companies that don't do anything on anniversaries? Like I can recall the Metroid anniversary came and gone and they didn't do anything.
Yeah.
It was like, what the hell, guys? Like, oh, hey, but we got Splatoon 2 coming out. Right? No. Time out. We know you want to push your Splatoon content out, but Metroid is a big subject, especially for us North American audience. Where the hell is my Metroid? Well, here's Federation Forces. No.
It's a slap in the face of diehard Metroid fans.
Yeah.
Essentially, is what it is. It's too bad that you don't get that. It's too bad that a company missed an opportunity to placate to their fans and generate revenue. Like why they wouldn't do it it confuses me. it's a missed opportunity.
There's one example now that I'm looking at my shelf here that I'm thinking of that it's an example that I love that they did wait a certain amount of time for a console generation to do, but I also kind of wish they went a little bit longer. Pokemon Gold for the original Game Boy Color is arguably the best Pokemon game ever.
It's a lot of people's favorite.
Because a lot of people really like, especially me, because considering, you go through the whole new area and then get to go to the original area.
Yeah.
They did re-release it and remake it, I guess, in a way, for the Nintendo DS, which was great because at least it was a new console, new graphical update, new everything. But I think the timing on it too was like, I think they had just finished Black and White and then it came out. And then after that was, I think X and Y came out. And I was like, had they waited that one extra year, I could have had Gold and Silver in 3D instead of just the sprite version, which was what the Heart Gold Soul Silver was. It was still like a graphical update, but it was still very much sprite based, X and Y was the start of them using more 3D models and stuff. So I liked that they did it, but I also sometimes wish they maybe just waited one extra year to kind of...
Sprites are greater than 3D models all the time, in my opinion.
That's a problem that goes back to like Final Fantasy VII being remade.
Yeah.
I like the sprite art. It was made to be
7's in polygons.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah.
Well, don't worry. They'll put in DLC that you can purchase to make everybody look like the old polygon style for $20.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know. I don't think there's much more to say on this topic, really. Like,
what do you think? Why do movie remakes get crapped on almost every single time, whereas game remakes are accepted generally?
Is it the interaction thing, maybe? Because like with games, like you interact with them. With movies, you're just sitting there watching something. Like,
sure, but
granted, that could be argued that some people do get drawn into a movie, so they do feel that interaction that way. Which, like, say with Star Wars and the new Star Wars, like a lot of us do feel kind of going back to that old Star Wars saga. But with video games, like it's because it's something you play, you probably feel more interaction with it.
I think Star Wars is a good example because it's not just movies. That's a whole, like, you might have played the toys, you might have played video games, you might have played board games. Like, you can get drawn into the universe in tons of different ways. So people are very attached to their idea of what Star Wars is. So when they do it wrong, like Battlefront 2, that's why you get all that backlash, I think, as opposed to if they would have just put out, like if Ubisoft did this with like Tom Clancy Wildlands or something, where people don't have that huge attachment to a big franchise, I don't think you would have seen the same blowout you did with Battlefront 2.
Mm-hmm. Because the movie game thing works. Because a game, when it comes back out, in essence, it's the same game. It's what you loved originally with things tacked on, added on, tweaked slightly. Whereas when they redo a movie, like Total Recall, it's a completely different movie. It's a completely different tone.
That one, I think, is comparable to the Resident Evil somewhat, where you had an old movie that had some camp to it, where they tried to update it and make it more relevant to modern stuff. Why did it hit with the game and not the movie?
Because the game, you're still playing the same game. Like, you're still... If they would have it's like re-releasing...
You're still watching the same movie.
No, you're not watching
a lot
the
of the same
movie.
plot points, and still got 3 boobs.
But you're not watching the same movie. They're different movies completely.
It depends on the movie because like...
But
like,
Total Recall specifically, what we're talking about, they are
No,
completely
but I'm
different
thinking
movies.
for my example, like with RoboCop. RoboCop essentially was still the exact same story. Like, plot line for plot line, they were still exactly the same movie.
No, different. Because you had a guy generating military combat robots that were fighting RoboCop and became a plot. Like, the stories are very different for the RoboCop movies.
In Resident Evil, they add quite a bit of extra lore into the
but
remake
they
as well.
keep all the same ticks. It's the same actors, essentially. Like, you're looking at the same people in the game, just slightly updated. It's like if they put youth cream on Arnold Schwarzenegger to somehow make him look better.
But they like CG'd him into Terminator 4. He
Yeah.
was in the end of that one, and it didn't look right.
Yeah, but that's not a remake of Terminator 1.
No, I'm just saying like they
remake
have
of
the
Terminator.
technology to make like a young Guardians of the Galaxy 2. They had
Yep.
Kurt Russell look like Kurt Russell from the 80s. Like,
And
it was
that looked,
pretty
I thought
amazing.
that was awesome. It looked really good.
Yeah, so they can do that now.
Okay, so
And
what's your...
Tarkin died. Like I don't know. They have the tech. So do you think they can make a movie remake with the same actor and like still have it hit the same feels that it did in the old movie?
But... No, I don't.
So what's the difference between like the only movie
Because
remake
with
I
movies,
can think of that
movies visually we expect more out of them than we do out of video games. Like a video game, we're playing something and we're like, oh yeah, it's a video game, whatever. But a movie,
we're getting to the point where maybe those
but
are
we're
getting
not there.
close.
So you're asking me two different questions.
Okay.
You're saying,
We'll have to wait for the Uncharted movie, and then we can do decisions
yeah.
of.
But you know what I mean? Like you're asking me, it's like, well, what's the difference? We're almost there. It's like, well, that's two different plots.
The mainstream audience, I think, is very concerned with graphics and pushing those on the video game side of things. I think we're caught up there with movies for most people. You and me and Dustin, who've been playing for years and years, we've gone through all these generations of them, whereas everyone else that's coming up just knows Xbox One, PS4, and things look amazing. That's what they expect now.
Mm-hmm. What's your question?
Or the newer stuff kind of corrupts them a bit, because look at a lot of the younger kids and stuff where it's like, oh hey, you play this game and it's tutorial this, and then you hand them something like Super Metroid and they're like, how do I get Metroid to crawl? And you're like,
That was wonderful. Actually, when we lived in my old house, my son's best friend lived across the street, and she came over to play one day, and I was playing Mega Man Legacy Collection, and she looked at it and says, my dad won't let us play these games because they look terrible.
Wow.
And I'm like talking to him afterwards, like he just plays stuff like Destiny, just new shooters basically, very graphical focused stuff.
His kids are missing out.
She came and sat down and like watched it for like 20 minutes. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Asking questions and yeah.
Maybe to help summarize our discussion here, because we kind of went off on the movie part here. Swinging back here, what's a game that you guys, what's a game that you guys would like to see re-released or remade, and what changes would you like to see in it? Like what's something pure to your heart that you wouldn't mind seeing it redone the right way and have a little bit of fan service and elbow grease in it?
Like I'd like to see a more polished version of, and it's once again going back to Resident Evil. I feel like Kelsy was like, well, they added new stuff and they added new voice actors and they took the camp out, but it's, they're polishing something that's already great and not changing it so much where it's completely different. You're still hitting the same notes, you're still looking at the same characters. They just.
What about
like Metal Gear Solid?
They've HD'd that GameCube remake since then.
Yep.
And they have taken away. Well, they've added the option to turn off tank controls and do more standard controls.
That's a problem for me.
Me too. That changed the game significantly. But that's opening that game up to so many more people that hated the game because of the tank controls.
Yeah, and if somebody can, I'm still stuck on this whole movie thing, and I'm trying to wrap my head around Kelsey's questions.
My questions are, I agree with you 100% that original Total Recall is a million times better than new one. I'm just playing devil's advocate there too.
If it's opening it up to more people, fine. That's great. A lot of people have a lot of problems with going back and playing Metal Gear Solid games because they have problems with the controls. If they updated it, and if you're changing the controls to a game where the controls definitely feel clunky, maybe it's not a problem.
But they were clunky on purpose in those games to add to the suspense. Like I can't just turn around and run away. I am like gonna have trouble getting past them.
Remember, that's a good point, because
circle
nowadays you hold the joystick down to the direction that you see the character.
Yeah.
But sometimes the old days was like, no, you actually have to turn left and right because you got to control it like a vehicle. Like you said, tank controls.
Yeah, the fixed camera angle is another thing people always complain about in there, but it adds to tension. Like I can't see what's around this corner. I can't just turn the camera on and go, oh, there's two zombies there.
Yeah, and that's part of the gameplay experience. Like I said, to see Metal Gear Solid redone, I'd like to see it all smoothed out a little bit better.
Use that Fox engine to
update it a bit, and you can keep everything else the same. You can add. I'm sure there's new levels you can add in. Maybe a second encounter with a certain boss. Like you have another boss fight with a Revolver Ocelot or Ninja.
For the first Metal Gear, would you put the Metal Gear 4 polish on it or the Metal Gear 5 polish on it? Tough call, isn't it?
You'd go Twin Snakes.
Yeah. Like, I don't... Metal Gear Solid 4 has its place, but I don't necessarily like that game.
Okay.
Just, it doesn't need to be up to those standards. It just needs to be... Because when was the last time you played Metal Gear Solid? Ever?
About a year ago?
Like, it doesn't look great.
So the original or like
The
any
original.
other?
The original.
Probably at least 5 years ago.
Yeah. Every time I go back and play it, I have a I have a blast. I love that game. It's one of my favorite games ever made. Just doesn't look great.
Oh yeah, with the pixelated face.
Yeah, the flat face, the awkward elbows, everything looks like, although like you said, the polygons they don't look great. Doesn't look fantastic.
But again, that's also a limitation of technology.
Exactly. So to bring it up now, I think that's a game I'd like to see.
So you like to see Metal Gear 1?
Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Kels?
I'd like to take Persona 3 and 4 and keep almost everything the same. Just throw them into that like new 5 engine. Like the style about 5 was really cool. The combat mechanics were improved. The dungeon crawling was improved. The overworld map was improved. Like everything about the game is amazing, except for the cast wasn't as good as 3 and 4. So I'd just like to take the cast from those games and redo them in the 5. And I think they'd be like almost perfect games for me. I don't know how they could get any better than that.
And I guess that's kind of like the Final Fantasy argument with Dustin. Like take the story of 7 and make it like one of the other games. So blasphemous.
I had a really hard time going further back than, like you said, PlayStation and 64 era and finding a game where I want it updated. It was really hard. The only one I could think of, and it's like a really deep cut. I don't know if you ever played a game called Flying Dragon for the NES, and there's a sequel called Flying Warriors. That's the only game I can think of where they had an idea and they didn't quite get it right, where some of it's platforming and you got to do some like puzzle exploration, and then you get to the next part and it's like a one-on-one fighting game on the NES, which is really archaic for fighting games. They typically don't go back that far. So that part has these really cool ideas where you're doing a lot of back and forth, where you're hitting specific targets on the enemy and blocking specific targets on yourself, and you can do special moves and stuff. It didn't seem like they could get it where they had in their minds. So I think that one might translate better to newer gen with the newer combat mechanics in it.
I can think of 2 examples for mine here, and they're kind of both sides of the fence here for arguments for keeping stuff the way it is, and then the argument of actually updating it. For updating something, I would really like to see Pokemon Snap, because that was a game that I grew up with. I loved.
They didn't do that on the Wii U.
I can't believe
maybe it'll be on the Pokemon Stars Switch version, but it would be nice if they could finally do it. But give me, for remaking it, give me some sort of like kind of open world. I am a photographer. Like, let me crawl through the grass, adjust the wind, see the Pokemon there, and like basically be like on a safari simulator.
That's such a niche.
On the other side, keeping it the same style but kind of squishing it all together, the Mega Man Battle Network series, because I think that would be great as like a competitive thing, because they had so many battle chips, so many different ways of customizing your Mega Man stuff, that if they just amalgamated all into one super collection and had some sort of competitive battle mode that could be used for esports, whatnot, and everything, I would love that.
Yeah, there's a lot of games. You kind of touched on it perfectly, and so did Kelsey. And I think I mentioned earlier, the PlayStation generation is like the perfect candidate for a lot of the games to kind of be.
It was an awesome generation and so messy at the same time.
Exactly. There's so many great games came out of it, and just for it to be reglossed, a lot of the games. And then some of the NES games can be reglossed and brought up a little bit, like Phantom Fighter. Like, it's a cool concept, but it just looks not great. I had a couple other games I was just thinking of, but I can't remember them now. Phantom Fighter was definitely one of them, but that's a pretty niche game. Abadox could look cool if it was kind of like reglossed.
Don't 3D it though, keep it sprite based.
Yeah, exactly. I feel that a lot of the Nintendo games are really good the way they are.
There's some games too from that era and a little beyond that I wouldn't mind if they did a remake and like a demake and like sprite based them. Like I love Final Fantasy IX. It's one of my favorite games of all time. I'd love to have a sprite-based version
Yeah.
of Final Fantasy IX where everything is identical. All the combat systems are still there. Like it's the world map's the same and everything, but it's all sprites instead of 3D models. I think that would
I
really
love that game, but it does
scratch
look
an
a
itch
little
for me.
goofy.
It's almost like saying, like, it would be an interesting idea, but it's almost be like saying, like, oh, let's take the recent Mario Kart 8 and make it look like the Super Nintendo Mario Kart.
That
would be
just
weird.
because the drifting mechanics aren't great in Super Mario Kart, whereas they kind of picked it up from 64 onward because of that 3D plane. That's the only thing I can't see working with that. Otherwise, I'd love those kind of graphics and like everything.
But I think it would be an interesting experiment, though,
Totally.
to take something new and de-evolve it while keeping like certain mechanics still working well. Kind of, actually, it's almost like Sonic Mania, actually. Like take the good ideas, but work off of the old original ideas, and just blend the two together to form a great game.
Definitely.
I'll have to play Sonic Mania. I've never played it. It
I
sounds amazing.
want to, but it's digital, so I can't spend money on it.
You're not going to bring yourself
It's
to
poison.
Yeah, exactly.
I wonder if that one collector's edition that I told you about is still sitting in that spot I told you.
I don't want to know.
All right. Any final thoughts on today's discussion? Starting
Paul's
with
got
Paul.
something burning away.
Okay, so we didn't really go over this. I think Dustin might have mentioned his favorite, but what's your favorite remastered remake game?
Oh, actually, yeah, you're right. We didn't really touch on that too
There's
much.
some terrible ones you can think of too, where they've just totally botched it.
Well, let's
Let's stay positive here.
Yeah,
Let's go with the good.
I got
Okay.
some bones to pick here.
let's do favorite. We'll go around and do favorite because
Okay.
that's pretty quick, and then Kelsey can run
Rant.
down. Yeah,
Rant on
Run
the
down the market.
problem.
Kelsey, go ahead.
Oh, am I
prepared-
ranting first or good
No,
ones
no,
first?
No,
What's your
what's your fave?
Okay. We've already talked about Resident Evil a lot, so I thought I would also mention Silent Hill: Shattered Memories. They totally just like revamped the first game and made it a completely different style of game. It's still a horror game, but you're first person. They use the Wii remote really, really well. I can't think of another game where the Wii remote is been used better, where you're mostly using it as a flashlight. It's your cell phone, and you can do all this cool stuff while it's your cell phone. It was amazing, and they changed so much of the game that it goes against everything I said about earlier, where I want them to keep it as close to the core as possible. Like you've got these whole parts of the game where you're in a psychiatrist's session and answering questions, and they're using the questions that you answer to alter the game beyond that point to make it scarier. And it worked surprisingly well on me because I am terrible with directions, and somehow it picked that up. And I'd walk into a room and it's like there's 20 doors to go in. I don't know which one's the right door. There's things chasing me. I have no weapons, so I'm panicking, trying to find my way around and getting lost. And other people didn't have that experience. They had things like where they'd have weapons that would break and stuff, and it was really, really interesting. And just a quick shout out to Pikmin on the Wii as well, which is the exact same game just with the Wii controls, and it worked so much better. It was amazing, and I love the first one too. But it was a really good use of a like modern update to it.
Dustin.
I'm looking at my shelf because
I don't know what you're gonna do when we're at Kelsey's. You do have your shelf.
yeah, it's gonna be hard. It's like, what is your idea?
Take a picture of it and have it on your phone.
I think probably for games that have come out, because there's not a lot. There hasn't been like the perfect remaster or re-release for me yet, but some well-worthy titles. I would have to say probably the Metroid Prime trilogy, because like your Pikmin idea, all they did was they took the controls of Metroid Prime 3
example,
and just did it on Metroid Primes 1 and 2, as well as fixed a bug in Metroid Prime 2, which on my GameCube save version, I'm screwed because as soon as I go down the elevator, the game just stops.
Ooh.
They fixed that bug in the trilogy, so I really like that. The other one was probably the Crash Bandicoot and Insanity collection, because
so many good things about
for original PlayStation era, like you were saying, like that's a good area. They did that. They took the original Crash Bandicoots and kept the gameplay pretty much exactly the same, just updated it. But I also kind of still love that original look of Crash Bandicoot. So even though I have the Insane Trilogy, I will find myself going and playing the original copies.
Did you ever play the Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary Collection?
Yes.
Where they give you the option to, like, if you want the old graphics, like you can on the fly switch them back.
Funny
and forth.
enough, when I had an Xbox, because it was in the Master Chief collection, I actually purposely put it back to the original graphics.
I think that's an amazing idea.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
a great idea.
And they did that on Ultra Street Fighter as well for the Switch, where you can play original graphics or the new updated HD ones, and they both look amazing. But
Right.
it's so cool to have that.
Yeah,
option.
because the Switch one, because you just go, oh, I want CRT mode, and
Yeah.
it looks like you're playing on a
They
CRT.
did that in HD Remix as well.
Yeah, same idea. I love when they give that kind of fan service to the nostalgic guys like us, and they make it look new and fresh for new audience.
Guys like us, don't lump me in the same.
I'm lumping you in with the 43-year-old apparently over here.
All right, Paul. Well, then what about you?
Resident Evil, Street Fighter HD Remix, the Mega Man collection that they re-released. You know, they didn't change anything; they just kind of bundled it for me.
You talking about the Legacy collection? Or the Anniversary collection?
The Anniversary collection.
I have a bone with that one because they switched the shoot and the jump buttons, and they don't let you remap them back. So
yeah, that
I've
was a big
always
problem
had
when I
a
played
issue
it
with
as well.
that.
Yeah. Shadow of the Colossus coming out.
That looks good.
I'm super excited.
It's one of those
about
games
that.
where they're building from the ground up. I'm like, why does this look so amazing? Like, I
Yeah.
should not be into this, but
Yeah, it looks so good. I'm super.
that's one of those
excited for
games
that.
where I hope they don't add anything. Though that game is paced so well.
Yeah.
I don't like. I know there was other Colossuses they originally planned to have in the game, and they had to scrap because of limitations. I hope they don't
From
add them
what
back
I
in.
heard, it sounds like they're going to try to keep it exactly the same. The
Yeah.
only thing though is like I think they're changing like how you travel. Like it might be a little bit quicker,
No, I don't want that.
but not much. Like by like
travel.
2%.
Part of that game is just exploring this vast
Yeah.
world.
Getting lost
Yeah.
in the areas.
How do I get through these mountains to get to the next Colossus? Like,
Yeah.
if they speed that up, I think it'll wreck the pacing a little bit.
Yeah, like no quick travel. If they wanted to add in Colossi,
Yes.
Colossus.
I'd like to see it being another game mode where it's like, here's the original core game, and then here's
Once you finish it, like try
it
these
unlocks
challenges.
a bonus, or it unlocks a new room where it's not part of the game, but you can go into it, and there's a couple more statues.
I might be okay with that as long as they
Would
keep
you go into the
it
room
same.
and like rebattle them again?
No, it's just a room that has 4 new statues.
Oh, okay.
The new
These are the
statues
cut
are new.
Colossi we finished and
Yeah.
added them in.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
You know, maybe there's because it had a lot of invisible walls in that game, if I remember correctly, or was it all land?
I think it's all land.
Maybe there's like a
There's like cliffs and mountains that you can go over and
a
stuff.
cliff. When you beat the game, a cliff crumbles and you can go into a new area, and that's
Sure, the last boss was huge. If he falls
Yeah.
over, you got a whole bridge you can
Yeah.
get somewhere
Yeah.
else. Yeah.
and there's just a couple new keep the game the way it is, and then they add a little bit on the end of it.
Just add like a couple of creatures that
Yeah.
they didn't have room for.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, like Kelsey said, keep the pacing and everything until the end, and then you can tack something onto it.
Okay. All right, Kels. Let's go down your well of lackluster remasters.
There was a lot of them on the Wii where they tried to port things over. Like, do you guys remember Call of Duty and Dead Rising on the Wii? Dead Rising specifically?
Which Dead
The
Dead
first
Rising
one.
4?
No, on the Wii, original Wii. So Dead Rising came out on the 360. Big deal was like how many on-screen characters you could mow through at one time. And then when they ported it to the Wii, you couldn't have anywhere near that. And even the small amount they have, it was so choppy and clunky, and
really?
they had to cut things from the game. And
I remember it coming out, but I never played it because I played the original one so much.
See, when I think Resident Evil for the
terrible.
Wii, I think of the...
not
the-
Resident Evil, Dead Rising.
Oh, Dead Rise. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Sorry. Okay. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Then
Yeah,
it's...
a lot of the Resident Evil games on the Wii were fantastic. Yeah.
No, because you said Resident Evil, and I'm like, wait, you mean the light gun game? I
said
like
yeah.
that one.
I meant Dead Rising. No, the light gun games were really
Okay,
cool. They
Dead
were, like,
Rising,
just
yes. Dead
fan
Rising
service
had
right
a...
through.
Yeah.
Those were
Dead
cool.
Rising definitely did have an issue
Yeah.
because, like you said, it was a mall full of zombies, and then the Wii version was like, hey, look, there's 2 zombies.
Yeah. And this might actually tie in well with the Total Recall conversation earlier, but they tried to redo GoldenEye on the Wii.
Yes, I
And they
remember that.
changed it significantly. Like,
Yeah.
even like they're like, we're going to throw Daniel Craig in here now because people know him as Bond instead of Pierce
Well,
Brosnan.
that one also wasn't just on the Wii, though.
It was originally. They remastered the remaster on the PS3 and 360 a year later.
But it still wasn't the same, though.
No, they kept the Wii one that people didn't like.
I know, but
Yeah.
it still wasn't the same GoldenEye that we were all used to.
Yeah, which is weird to take a property like that is so beloved and just butcher it so badly.
Do you have Typing of the Dead on your list?
I don't, because that's an amazing game.
That's
It's so good. They redid Conquer
Broccoli,
Bad Fur Day.
bang. Tomatoes, bang.
It's fun, man. You like that? Conquer's Bad Fur Day on the original Xbox. the cool edgy system, and that was the censored version over the Nintendo
Oh,
version.
Yeah.
That's
right, and then they had the
Very
what is
bizarre.
it, locked and reloaded version or something.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They
Didn't they
did add
remove
some
an
other
entire
stuff. They had
level
some
from
like
it?
online things and some new multiplayer stuff. But just for the core game to be censored on an Xbox over Nintendo was such a weird
really
decision
strange.
for people.
Oh,
And it
that's
was
right.
at-
Because even though on the N64 one, when they got to the part where they cussed, they still had it bleeped out on the text. But like the actions you did, yeah, you're right, because they did a whole black bar on the
And that was
360
at
version.
Microsoft's request. They
Yeah,
said
that's
this game is
weird.
too much. Like that's
While
bizarre.
Nintendo originally was like, do it.
Yeah.
Like the original one it's a lot of fun. It's a fun game.
I wish I
Yeah.
could find it. I wish it wasn't like $70 a cartridge.
Yeah.
It's a pricey one.
Is that your
Yeah.
list?
No, I got one more.
Okay, you get one more.
Okay, one more, and this is the same thing I've complained about many times. Stop making sprite games into 3D. It's stupid every time.
Uh-oh.
Mega Man Powered Up on the PSP,
Oh,
and not
okay.
only that, they messed around and added 2 new Master Robots, which were dumb, Time and Oil. But just the whole look of that game is the ugliest thing I've ever seen.
Counterpoint to that, same era. What about the Mega Man X remaster?
Yeah, don't make things 3D that don't need to be 3D.
No, but that one was interesting because you could play as Vile.
Yeah, but it's 3D. It's terrible. And they did it with Ghosts and Goblins as well, and it just,
Yeah, that was.
ugh.
What was that game called? Maxim.
No, they did a literal Ghosts and Goblins like total remake on the PSP, like Ghosts and Goblins remix or something like that, where
Yikes.
they just made it 3D.
That's no good.
It's
Nope.
terrible.
What was
Maximo wasn't the worst thing, but
It's not a bad game.
Yeah. but they tried to do like a sequel basically. Yeah, just don't make things 3D. We like 2D, or I like 2D.
Yeah. You know,
Well-
if you're gonna change a game, make it so that you have to type your way through it in Kelsey's
Yeah,
game.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Well, I guess
Still have my
I guess
Dreamcast keyboard in the box.
our general consensus obviously here is that it's hard to please everybody on what a remaster should be, but
They're generally good.
they're generally good as long as you don't tweak the core aspect of it too much, and do give us some extra content that maybe didn't make it into the game. Like put some polish into it, put some elbow grease, put some love into it, and make it like a well worth purchase
Get that
for us
new
to get.
audience, and at the same time, throw something in there to make old fans happy.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't try to make a buck off of us. Like
You've already made your buck off of
Yeah.
the old fans, so make your buck off the new fans, and just throw something to make
Yeah.
us happy.
Right.
Yeah.
We all have that Futurama moment when they announce that thing, and we're like, "Shut up and take my money."
Yeah.
You've already made your sale. Just get it out.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, I guess that sums it up for this episode of PodQuest.
Oh wait, and don't pay to win.
Don't pay to win. Winners don't use pay to win.
Winners don't play. They play.
Yeah, okay. So that
Clip that.
sums up this episode of episode 2 of PodQuest here. If you like what you hear, please, by all means, leave us a comment and subscribe to the channel here. We'll definitely have some more content coming out here fairly soon, but do keep an eye out as that we do have these podcasts come out every week. And if you have any questions you'd like to ask us specifically, or have a topic that you'd like us to cover on a future episode of PodQuest, please leave the comment below.
We actually have a special giveaway. If you like and subscribe, we will release another episode. Free of charge. That's it. That's all I got.
That's the so
That's my plug.
for every subscription we have a free episode.
Exactly. That's my plug.
Oh boy.
Sayonara.
Awkward silence at the end. I love it.
I love it too.